Ladies, can we have a quick little chat? Have you had that moment recently? You're standing in front of the mirror, you pull your hair back, and suddenly realize you're seeing a lot more scalp than you used to. It creates this silent panic, doesn't it? That sinking feeling that you're losing a vital piece of your femininity. But here is the truth. You haven't done anything wrong. This is simply a biological shift, no different than your eyesight changing. In fact, 40% of women over 50 experience visible hair loss. That is nearly half the women you know, likely dealing with this exact same struggle silently. So please, take a breath. It's not just you. We are in this together. And the solution isn't about hiding it. It's about engineering. Think of it as building architectural scaffolding for your strands. Today, we are exploring the 4 strategic haircuts for thinning hair women over 60 can use to restore density. And stick with me, because I'm going to reveal a secret celebrity technique called ghost layers. It's exactly how we build volume from the inside out. But before we can start building that volume, we have to look at the foundation itself and understand why the ground is shifting beneath us. Most women think they are losing hair, as in, it's falling out. But often, that isn't the whole story. What you are experiencing is something called miniaturization. Think of it this way. In your 30s, your hair follicle was producing a strand as thick as a pipe. But after menopause, that same follicle shrinks and starts producing a strand that looks more like a drinking straw. The data shows that hair diameter decreases by about 10 to 15%. Now, 15% might sound small, but when you multiply that shrinkage across 100,000 hairs on your head, you have lost massive amounts of overall volume, even if you haven't lost a single strand. And here is the cruel paradox that drives us all crazy. You might be touching your hair right now and thinking, but wait, my gray hairs feel coarse, they feel thick. You are absolutely right. While the strand is shrinking in diameter, the texture often becomes wiry and unruly because it lacks the natural oils of pigmented hair. So you end up with this frustrating combination: hair that is poofy and wild on the surface, yet completely transparent and see-through when the light hits it. It's the worst of both worlds. It refuses to lay smooth, but it lacks the density to cover your scalp. This brings us to the most important realization of your style journey. Because your building material has fundamentally changed, your blueprint, your haircut, must change with it. You cannot build the same house with straws that you built with pipes. If you want to make thinning hair look fuller, we have to stop fighting the texture and start engineering around it. That is exactly what these 4 cuts do. And for those of you battling that specific wiry texture we just discussed, you will want to pay very close attention to cut number 3. It is designed specifically to tame that unruly gray while boosting volume. Let's start with the absolute hardest area to hide, the crown. You know the struggle I'm talking about. You can artfully arrange the front, but the back? It feels like a losing battle. You find yourself constantly trying to comb hair backward, hoping it stays in place to cover that widening spot. For severe crown thinning, we have to be honest with ourselves. Length is often the enemy here because gravity pulls the strands apart, exposing the scalp even more. If you are looking for the absolute best haircut for crown thinning, we have to look at the ultimate reset. It's bold, it's chic, and it solves the coverage problem instantly. We call it the textured Pixie. Now, before you panic about the length, let me explain the engineering brilliance behind this cut. It relies on something stylists call the shingle effect. Imagine the tiles on a roof. They overlap one another to create a solid, impenetrable surface. That is exactly what we do with a textured Pixie cut for thin hair. When your hair is long, the weight drags the root flat against your skull, exposing the scalp. But when we cut short, graduated layers, each little section of hair acts like a support beam for the section above it. They physically prop each other up. This creates natural lift at the root without you needing a gallon of hairspray. But what about the front? If your hairline is receding, we use a technique called the deep fringe. Instead of starting your bangs at the hairline where hair is sparse, we start the section much further back at the crown. We are essentially stealing density from where you have it and bringing it forward to where you need it, creating a thick, deliberate bang that frames your eyes beautifully. The key to making this look elegant and not severe is customization based on your bone structure. You need to give your stylist specific instructions. If you have a round face, ask for height at the crown. By stacking the layers higher on top, we elongate the silhouette, making the face look slimmer. If you have a square face, ask for wispy bits around the ears. We want to soften that jawline, not expose it. Now, I can practically hear some of you taking a sharp breath right now. You're thinking, "It's beautiful, but I am absolutely terrified of going that short." I hear you. It is a massive leap. But what if I told you there is a middle ground? A way to get that crown volume without losing the safety blanket of hair around your face? My friends, for those of you who want that crown lift but aren't quite ready to commit to the shears, let me introduce you to the perfect compromise. We call it the Bixie. It might sound like a funny name, but it is actually a brilliant piece of engineering. Think of it as the love child of the bob and the pixie. You keep the length at the nape and around the ears, just like a bob, but you cut the crown with the short, textured layers of a pixie. It is hands down one of the most effective volumizing haircuts for older women because it targets the flatness on top without sacrificing the length on the sides. We often call this the Goldilocks zone. It isn't too short that you feel exposed, yet it isn't so long that gravity drags your features down. But here is the real magic. You can still tuck your hair behind your ears. I know that for so many of us, that physical sensation, that ability to tuck, is a safety blanket. It makes you feel covered and framed. With the Bixie, you keep that security around your face, but because we have removed the heavy weight from the top, the roots can finally stand up and breathe. You get the comfort of coverage with the lift of a shortcut. And the beautiful bonus? It looks incredibly modern. It doesn't look like you are trying to hide thinning hair. It looks like you made a chic, intentional style choice. But I know there is a group of you watching right now who are still shaking your heads. You are thinking, "No, that is still too short. I want a proper bob. I want length." I hear you. But usually, keeping length on thin hair guarantees stringy, transparent ends. Unless you use the specific technique coming up next. Let's talk about the soft blunt bob. Now, we need to have a very honest conversation about the biggest myth in hairstyling. For decades, you have been told that layers create volume, and if you have thick, heavy hair, that is true. But for thinning hair, traditional layers are often the enemy. Think about the physics of it. When you cut a layer, you are removing weight and density from the bottom edge to create shortness on top. On fine hair, this creates what I call the jellyfish effect. You get a little bit of puff at the crown, but the bottom 3 inches of your hair become stringy, transparent tentacles. You end up seeing right through the ends to your clothing, which only highlights how little hair is actually there. The antidote to transparency is solidity. This is why one of the most effective bob hairstyles for thinning hair is what we call the soft blunt bob. Picture a brand new broom standing on its bristles. The bottom edge is a thick, solid line. It looks dense. Now picture an old broom where the bristles are worn and tapered. It looks wispy and weak. To create the optical illusion of density, we need to cut a solid, blunt line at the perimeter. Now, look at the difference on screen. By simply removing those see-through ends and creating a hard line, the hair instantly looks twice as thick. But I know the question forming in your mind. If we cut it blunt, won't I look like a triangle? Won't it look heavy and mushroomy? This is where the magic happens. This is the secret technique celebrity stylists use, and it is called ghost layers, or sometimes internal layers. Here is how it works. Instead of cutting layers on the top of your head, which leaves you with that stringy bottom, your stylist lifts up the top section of your hair, the canopy, and clips it out of the way. They leave that top layer long and untouched. Then, they go into the hair underneath and cut shorter, rhythmic gaps into the middle section. Think of it like a crinoline petticoat under a skirt. You don't see the petticoat. You just see the beautiful volume it pushes into the skirt. These internal layers act as invisible scaffolding that pushes the top layer up and out, giving you massive volume. But, and this is key, you keep the solid, blunt line at the bottom. And a critical warning, this is not the same as using thinning shears. Thinning shears shred the cuticle and cause frizz. We are talking about precise point cutting versus blunt cut techniques that maintain the integrity of the strand while building structure from the inside out. So, when you go to the salon, here is your formula. I want a blunt perimeter for density, but I need internal ghost layers for lift. If this concept of ghost layers is a light bulb moment for you, do me a favor and comment ghost layers down below. I want to see how many of us have been suffering with the jellyfish effect unnecessarily. But, for my friends with natural wave or curl, that blunt bob we just discussed, it is often a disaster waiting to happen. It creates that dreaded pyramid effect, flat at the roots and wide at the bottom. For you, we need a completely different architectural approach. We call it the modern shag. Now please don't picture a 70s rock star. Modern just means softer edges. We are looking for what I call controlled chaos. Think about the physics here. Straight hair is like a heavy velvet curtain. It needs a weighted hem to hang properly. But curly hair is like a coiled spring. If you leave weight at the bottom, gravity pulls the coil straight and your volume disappears. It drags your face down. The shag removes that weight through unconnected layers. It releases the spring. This allows the curl to recoil, lift up, and expand. You are essentially trading weight for width. This is one of the most effective low-maintenance haircuts for women over 60 because for the first time, you are working with your texture's natural desire to expand rather than trying to beat it into submission. You see, you can spend hundreds on the perfect architectural cut, but it will collapse the moment you wash it if we do not fix the chemistry happening in your bathroom. First, let's look at your volumizing spray. A lot of women are afraid of these products because they think it is just sticky glue in a bottle that makes hair feel dirty. It isn't. Good volumizers contain positively charged polymers called polyquaterniums. Think of this like a magnetic coating that wraps around each individual hair strand. Remember that 15% diameter we lost to miniaturization in the beginning? This chemistry artificially puts that thickness back. It effectively turns the straw back into a pipe, but product is only half the battle. The real tragedy happens with your blow dryer. You see, heat does not set a style. Heat only makes hair moldable. It breaks the hydrogen bonds so you can change the shape. If you take the brush out while the hair is still hot, those bonds haven't reformed and the volume collapses immediately. This brings us to the cool shot rule, and it is the single biggest difference between a salon blowout and a home disaster. That little blue button on your dryer? It is not a decoration. It is the lock. Here is the rule for home styling. You heat the section with your round brush to shape it. Then, and this is non-negotiable, you keep the brush in place, press the cool button, and count to a full 10. 1, 2, 3, all the way to 10. Most people do a quick 3-second blast. That is not enough. The hair must feel physically cold to the touch before you release the brush. That cooling process is what reforms the hydrogen bonds and locks that shape in stone. Learning how to cut thinning hair to look thicker is step 1, but mastering this cooling physics is step 2. If you release the brush while the hair is hot, gravity wins instantly. If you release it cold, you win. And that victory isn't just about volume. It is about walking into that salon with a completely new mindset about what is possible for your image. I want to leave you with one final truth to carry into the salon. The legendary stylist Sam McKnight famously said, "Short hair isn't a loss of femininity, it is a non-surgical facelift." He is absolutely right. When we stop hiding behind a curtain of transparent strands, we reveal the bone structure, the eyes, and the wisdom underneath. You are not walking into that appointment to apologize for your age or your thinning texture. You are walking in with an architectural plan to reveal your confidence. So I have to ask, which blueprint are you choosing? Are you Team Pixie, Team Bixie, Or are you ready to ask for those secret ghost layers? I want to see your vote in the comments below. It helps us all see what is working for this community. And if you are ready to stop fighting your biology and start engineering your style, make sure you are subscribed. Next week, we are breaking down the physics of the silver transition, specifically how to do it without that awkward skunk stripe phase. That analysis drops soon.